1,000 years ago, Japan teetered on the edge of collapse. Emperors powerless, warlords hungry, and chaos reigning. From this anarchy rose a new breed of warrior men who forged nobility from blood and steel. These were the samurai born not of honor, but of survival. 1,000 years ago, Japan stood on the edge of chaos. The emperor's power was fading. Bandits ruled the countryside, and warlords carved the land into pieces. Out of this darkness rose a new kind of warrior, men who lived by the sword and whose loyalty could be bought with gold or blood. They weren't born noble. They became it through violence, cunning, and an unbreakable will. These men would one day be called samurai. But their journey from hired swords to rulers of Japan is far darker and far more human than the legends will ever tell. This is how chaos created the samurai. By the mid-period, the imperial court in Kyoto was a spectacle of refined culture. Guests would compose intricate poems on delicate fans, attend lavish festivals, and indulge in courtly intrigues. But step just beyond the city walls, and you'd find a very different Japan. Roads crumbled into impassable tracks. Bandits roamed freely, and a vital tax, grain meant to fill the capital's coffers, rarely arrived. The emperor's civil governors, appointed from the most aristocratic families, viewed rural Japan with a mixture of disdain and genuine fear, as if it were some strange, dangerous foreign land. Their solution to this growing anarchy: simple outsourced security. Desperate aristocrats began sending gold, rice, and even land rights to any provincial clan that promised protection. But there was a massive catch, one that would fundamentally reshape Japanese society. These provincial clans answered to local strongmen, not to the distant effete capital. Each estate effectively became a miniature kingdom defended by mounted archers. Warriors who were fast, incredibly practical, and loyal only to the hand that fed them, not to some abstract imperial decree. In short, Japan's central government decentralized itself by accident. These bodyguards, these saburo, became the only things standing between what little order remained and total starvation for the populace. The moment you needed thugs to collect your own taxes, the age of elegance was officially, irrevocably over. And that quietly was the true dawn of the age of the samurai. Who were these country warriors? These meant samurai. They were a scrappy, diverse mix. Minor royalty who'd fallen out of favor. Land-rich farmers with a knack for fighting. Horse-trading nomads. And ex-adventurers who spoke with regional draws. The sophisticated court mocked as rough music. They weren't about refined aesthetics. They were about raw effectiveness. Their fighting style told that whole story. Short, powerful composite bows perfect for shooting from horseback. Cheap, thick iron swords designed to hack through leather and bone rather than for elegant dueling, and mismatched armor often scavenged or cobbled together from Chinese traders. What they lacked in courtly glamour, they made up for in undeniable results. A single well-organized clan could ride into a disputed territory, burn a troublesome harvest, and negotiate a manor's new tax rights all within the same week. The Kyoto nobles, increasingly desperate and powerless, started handing out official titles like Jito land steward and Shugo military governor, as if they were mere party favors hoping to gain some semblance of control. But these titles, once imperial appointments, now legitimized the local power of these warriors. Overnight, the saburo, now commonly pronounced samurai, stopped being temporary help. They became the permanent, undeniable power on the ground. The warriors had solved the nobles' immediate security crisis. Yes, but in doing so, they had inadvertently created a brand new existential one. Who precisely controlled the countryside anymore? And more importantly, who would control Japan? Here's where clever politics, shrewd marriages, and a dash of ruthless ambition truly kick in. The rising samurai clans weren't just good at fighting. They were masters of strategic alliance building. They married into noble families, adopting heirs from rivals to cement new loyalties. Each successful alliance glued together new territories, meticulously stitched from rice fields, mountain passes, and vital fishing villages. The equation was simple and brutal. Land equal troops. More troops equal more land. It was a self-perpetuating cycle of power. By the 11th century, three massive coalitions, the Taira, the Minamoto, and various offshoots of the once dominant Fujiwara, had begun to truly dominate the landscape. They didn't just guard estates anymore. They ran entire regional economies. They managed tax ledgers, settled complex lawsuits between villagers, and even issued travel passes, essentially acting as a shadow government. A quiet, almost resigned court edict in 1180 finally admitted the undeniable truth. These provincial warriors would now pass their titles and lands hereditarily, no questions asked. Think about that for a second. The bodyguards had quite literally slipped the deed to the property into their back pocket and changed the locks. In barely 3 generations, they had transformed from hired defenders to regional rulers. It was arguably history's fastest corporate promotion, and it fundamentally altered the fabric of Japan forever. All that simmering growth and territorial ambition inevitably exploded into the Gemp War. A brutal 5-year brawl between the two most powerful samurai clans, the Taira and the Minamoto. This wasn't just a skirmish. It scorched Japan from the tranquil inland sea all the way to the very gates of Kyoto itself. Battles swung with dizzying speed and unpredictable ferocity. One month, the Taira might control the emperor and the capital, basking in their perceived supremacy. The next, a daring warrior like Minamoto no Yashitsune would execute a seemingly impossible naval charge at Ichinoani, turning the tide with audacious tactics. The conflict culminated in the legendary naval battle of Dan-Nura in 1185, where, according to poignant tales, the 7-year-old Emperor Anku was clutched in his grandmother's arms as she leapt into the waves, choosing death over surrender. When the salt spray finally settled and the smoke cleared, Minamoto no Yoritamo stood atop the wreckage of the Taira clan. He did something utterly unprecedented. He established the Bakufu, literally the tent government, later known as the Kamakura shogunate. This wasn't just a new administration. It was a seismic shift. Real power for the first time slid definitively from the jewel-bed nobles of Kyoto to the weather-beaten, pragmatic soldiers of the provinces. These samurai now collected rent, judged crimes, and commanded armies, all in the shogun's name. Samurai rule wasn't a side gig anymore. It was the main government franchise, a military dictatorship that would define Japan for centuries. Fast forward a century or two, the initial fervor of constant warfare cooled, and samurai life began to diversify, becoming far more complex than just fighting. Sure, young boys still drilled relentlessly with the yumi bao and the katana, which by now had evolved into the exquisitely curved, razor-sharp steel art we recognize today. But the smartest warriors, the ones who truly thrived, also studied accounting. Running a hand domain, a samurai territory, meant far more than just military prowess. It required meticulously auditing rice yields, organizing the repair of crucial flood dikes, and drafting Chinese-style memos that were probably so dry they bored even the scribes themselves. Amidst these administrative duties, culture blossomed within the samurai class. The renowned tea master Sennoiku refined the tea ceremony, transforming it into a meditative, spiritual pursuit that became a cherished samurai hobby. Warriors moonlighted as poets, composing elegant haiku before dawn inspections or after a long day of administrative tasks. No theater troupes earned stipends performing intricate dramas after victory banquets or simply for the entertainment of their lords. Even fashion turned subtly sophisticated. Layers of silk dyed in specific shades to match a provincial banner became the ultimate statement, because nothing after all says quiet power quite like coordinated understatement. Idle hardly. A samurai's calendar overflowed with parade practice, complex lawsuit arbitration, and the occasional grim duty of seppuku supervision. All proof that prestige and paperwork in this new Japan went hand in hand. Mention samurai, and inevitably someone will chirp Bushido. But here's another historical nuance. The code of the warrior, as we understand it, crystallized quite late in their history. Really late. Early warriors, those original provincial toughs, primarily valued victory, the acquisition of land, and a flexible loyalty that could often flip for the right price or opportunity. It wasn't until the long, relatively peaceful Edo period that scholars, often influenced by Confucian and Zen Buddhist thought, meticulously stitched together old tales, precepts of duty, and principles of calm into the famous 7 virtues you might see on dojo walls today. Integrity, respect, courage, honor, compassion, honesty, and loyalty. Yet once formalized, Bushido became a powerful, sometimes brutal force. It wasn't just a philosophy. It was a way of life with severe consequences. Insult your lord or bring dishonor upon your family, and you might be expected to slit your own belly to save your family's stipends and reputation. Run from battle, and your name could be erased from village registries, effectively making you a non-person. This potent mixture of honor, profound shame, and meticulous bureaucratic record-keeping created a self-policing class. Samurai were expected to be paragons of virtue, capable of toppling corrupt ministers with righteous indignation, but also strict enough to police their own children for sloppy sword etiquette. Ruthless, absolutely. But this intricate code glued together 7 centuries of samurai dominance into something resembling a stable, if sometimes harsh, social order. Pop culture absolutely loves the Battle of Seigajara, and for good reason. It was epic, but context, as always, matters. In 1600, a staggering 160,000 samurai collided in a fog-shrouded muddy field, making it the largest samurai showdown in history. The Eastern Army, loyal to the cunning Tokugawa Ieyasu, cheered for the 8 provinces, while the Western Army, under the unwavering Ishida Mitsunari, screamed for loyalty to Hideyori. By sunset, the field reeked of iron, blood, and rice wine. Ieyasu's decisive victory didn't just win a battle. It birthed the Tokugawa shogunate, ushering in an unprecedented 250 years of relative peace and stability for Japan. But many smaller, equally pivotal fights shaped Japan, too. Nagashino in 1575 proved definitively that volley fire from arquebuses could decimate even the most formidable cavalry charges, forever changing the face of Japanese warfare. Okahazama in 1560 saw Oda Nobunaga, then a seemingly eccentric clown prince, vault to prominence by orchestrating a brilliant surprise attack that routed a much larger army, setting him on the path to unifying Japan. And then there's the Hinoji incident in 1582, a stark reminder of the fickle nature of samurai politics. Noaga, betrayed by one of his own generals, found himself cornered and chose to die by his own hand, reportedly singing a poem as his temple burned around him. Each of these clashes rewrote alliances, redrew boundaries, and reinforced the brutal, undeniable lesson. Ultimate power belonged to whoever could best feed, pay, and inspire their warriors in the field. The arrival of Commodore Perry's black ships in 1853, with their intimidating cannons and demand for trade, cracked Edo Japan open, exposing its vulnerability. By 1868, the Meiji Restoration swept through the country with a force that was both revolutionary and heartbreaking for the samurai. I want the old ways. In came rifles, railroads, and a radical, earth-shattering slogan, "Abolish the samurai." It was a declaration that ended a 700-year era. Top knots, the distinctive samurai hairstyle, were literally shorn off and hit salon floors. Cherished swords, once symbols of status and soul, became mere souvenirs. Their hereditary stipends, the economic bedrock of their families, were converted into government bonds that quickly shrank with inflation, rendering many destitute. The first samurai weren't pristine, romanticized icons. Far from it, they were pragmatic, often ruthless fighters who seized an opportunity in a fractured land, upgrading themselves from glorified bouncers to powerful barons. They didn't just rewrite Japanese history. They became it. They mastered the art of war, then the complexities of paperwork, and eventually even the subtleties of poetry, proving that true power endures when you can both swing a devastating sword and meticulously balance a ledger. 700 years of unparalleled rule all started the day a desperate noble hired a bit of provincial muscle to guard a rice field.